let's cut across immediately to Dhruva Jaishankar, Director, ORF America. We have him for a very short time. Welcome, Mr. Jaishankar. But first question, we saw US President Donald Trump deliver his inaugural address. What to you was most noteworthy? How much of it do you reckon is bluster? How much do you think he's very serious about?
I mean, I think there are two categories of policy issues. One are areas where he has been very consistent, both during his campaign, during his first term, in fact, in some cases even before. So it's quite clear where he stands on undocumented migration, where he stands on energy, where he stands on tariffs and the trade deficit, and he's taking some measures to we've seen that in the first few hours. Now he's taken some measures to address those. On some other issues, obviously there are internal debates and deliberations that are underway. In some cases, different factions, different sets of advisors have different views on this, and so I think it still remains to be seen where he will come out on China, where he will come out on Russia, where he will come out on some of the specifics related to the economy and supply chains and on legal migration. So I think these are some areas where he hasn't taken immediate decisive steps, but in other areas he has. So I think that was quite clear, and he mentioned many of the same themes in his inaugural speech. I would say the one idea that I would highlight from his inaugural address is he says he wants to keep his legacy as that one of someone who is a peacemaker and someone who finds solutions to international problems. That was what was implied. Now, how he goes about that remains to be seen. The one example he gave was Israel and Palestine and the release of hostages by Hamas. But whether that applies in other areas such as Ukraine, such as in the Indo-Pacific, again, remains to be seen. But it's interesting that he's thinking already, it appears, of the second term as one of his legacy, rather than his first term, which was obviously he was up for re-election at that time.
Mr. Jaishankar, my colleague Geeta has a question for you. Go ahead, Geeta.
Right. Dhruva, the fact that there are mixed signals over here, we did not see Donald Trump really hit very hard at China. There was hardly any mention apart from the fact that he spoke about ownership of the Panama Canal. But there's a Quad ministerial happening in a few hours from now. The foreign ministers of Quad countries are going to meet: India, Japan, Australia, and now the recently confirmed US Secretary of State. So what's that messaging over here? Indo-Pacific, Quad being a focal point, yet he's engaging China, speaking to Xi Jinping ahead of his inauguration.
No, this exactly, and this speaks to what I said. I think China policy is still a little bit uncertain. On the one hand, Trump, invited Xi Jinping to his inauguration. The vice president, who's the seventh ranking member of the Politburo Standing Committee in Beijing, attended, and he's also stayed in some ways an order on TikTok. We'll see again about the implementation of that. So on the one hand, you have these seemingly more conciliatory gestures directed towards Beijing. On the other hand, he mentioned very specifically in the context of the Panama Canal on trade and tariffs. He also very specifically talked about China. And then there's been the Quad meeting as well. So again, I think we're seeing these twin tracks, and some of it is reflective again of different views of his advisors. Largely, the national security team, both at the White House and at the State Department, tends to be more China skeptical, whereas others, including donors, people in the business community, want to see more of an accommodation or more cooperation with China. So I think that is one area we'll see in the next few weeks and months. I would just harken back to 2017, where very early on in his first tenure, President Trump met with Xi Jinping in Mar-a-Lago at his home in Florida. It seemed that meeting initially seemed to have gone well, and yet over the subsequent months, he felt betrayed. He felt that China had not lived up to its end of the bargain, and by within a few months, we started seeing him adopting a much more confrontational approach to China.
Well, there is word that he did speak to President Xi Jinping right before his inaugural. But, one quick question, Mr. Jaishankar, before we let you go. There are a lot of Indians who'd be watching the developments very, very closely because, number one, he's vowed to try and end birthright citizenship in the country. Of course, that is debatable where the 14th Amendment comes into question. But when it comes down to unaccounted Indians, how badly do you think India would be hit on that account?
Again, it remains to be seen because I think there are many different categories. It's not a monolith. There are many people who are in a bit of a limbo. They have, one of their visa status has expired. They have applied for a new status and they're waiting for clearance, such as for a green card or something like that. So there's a big category of those people. There are those who have come in through other means, visa overstays. So I'm not sure there's one category. I think there's some concern both in India and the US about these trafficking groups, and both the US and India want to crack down upon that. So again, I think on some issues they may be able to find some kind of mutually acceptable accommodation. The bigger, longer-term challenge, of course, would be a legal migration regime.
Right.
And what that means. Again, you have conflicting views. There's some who want global talent as part of US competitiveness. There are others who are prioritizing cultural factors and would like to see lower migration from many countries.
But Mr. Jaishankar, there's been a fair amount of talk over the H1B visa. Indians are the majority H1B visa holders in the country, and if I'm not wrong, if you look at the fiscal year 2023, 72% of the total H1B approvals were Indians. How do you think this is going to figure in Trump 2.0?
No, so this is an issue. It is not only a Republican issue. In fact, Democrats have raised concerns about H1B as well. This is a program that has been around for many years and has, in some ways, utility has changed over time. It has not always been the same. So I think there is a view that something needs to change. The question is in what direction. A lot of it will also require legislative changes as well in the U.S. Congress. And although the Republicans do have a majority in both houses, in the House of Representatives, particularly, it's a very slim majority. So whether they can actually have some consensus on immigration reform, which has been a very thorny issue because people want to package many other questions of illegal migration as well within a sort of more comprehensive immigration reform. So it's very hard to see, not impossible, very hard to see that kind of comprehensive immigration reform taking place in Congress.
Mr. Jaishankar, we know you need to go, but Geeta, do you have a quick question before we let him go?
Just a very quick question, Dhruva. What do you think the early on engagement of the Quad leaders means for India? And in terms of concerns, what is it that you think the External Affairs Minister is going to raise?
No, so one is, I think it's a good sign. I mean, even the Biden administration, India was, after some of the closest allies, India was one of the first calls that Biden made as president. And, in fact, again, the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, his first bilateral engagement will be with India after the Quad meeting. So that is an encouraging sign that they want to get off to a good start in this early engagement. That doesn't mean there won't be challenges. I think, again, I would anticipate some very hard negotiations in the coming few weeks and months on immigration issues, on the trade deficit and on tariffs, amongst other areas. But again, broadly, a more cooperative partnership in many other areas, supply chain security, maritime security, a whole number of other areas where they have some mutual interests. So again, broadly positive that this is such an early engagement at a high level. But that doesn't mean that there won't be some very difficult negotiations.
All right, Dhruva Jaishankar, appreciate you joining us. Thank you there.